You're listening to The People's Voice, February 1st to 15th. The Liberals and Tories are fomenting a wider war in the Middle East. The Canadian government and official opposition have refused to take action to stop the genocidal siege of Gaza, but both have lined up to incite a wider war in the region. Liberals and Tories alike cheered on the US and British airstrikes against Yemen on January 11th, the pretext of which was to break efforts by Houthi or Ansar Allah forces to blockade Red Sea shipments to Israel. Ansar Allah says the blockade, which it is enforcing through drone and missile attacks on commercial vessels, will end when Israel allows humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. The government's claim of protecting international law is perverse, given that Canada announced its support for the airstrikes within minutes of dismissing South Africa's initiative to bring Israel to the International Court of Justice. The Canadian Peace Congress called Ottawa's support for Israel's aggression in Palestine cowardly and called for an immediate end to the Canadian participation in the attacks on Yemen. Meanwhile, in Quebec, Common Front wins are a lesson in the necessity of labor unity and mass struggle. After a series of strike actions by 500,000 workers in November and December, followed by weeks of intense negotiations, Quebec's Common Front of Unions announced a tentative deal with the Quebec government on January 7th. Since the Common Front first submitted its demands to the Treasury Board in October 2022, François Legault's right-wing coalition government has tried desperately to weaken the union's unity and solidarity, but has failed miserably. While there are some shortcomings to the tentative deal, it also includes significant and even historic gains, including the highest wage increase from a single contract in 45 years. The current bargaining battle is a step towards building a movement capable of confronting and defeating the power of corporate monopolies. The overall strategy is to strengthen labor against capital economically, socially, and politically. But rather than seeking unity and struggle, most of the labor leadership in Canada seems quite content with a divided House of Labor. The struggle of Quebec's Common Front of Unions is helping to illuminate the way forward for working people. The Canadian Labour Congress and the labour movement throughout Canada would be wise to get on to a similar path. Also, the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation organizes over 13,000 teachers in a series of one-day provincial strikes in a struggle to defend and expand public education. Public school funding in Saskatchewan fell from the highest among Canadian provinces in 2016 to 8th at present. The Saskatchewan Teachers Federation says that education cuts are preventing students from getting the support they need. The union is receiving enormous public support with over 18,000 calls and emails sent to the Premier and Education Minister Jeremy Cockrell. Following the second strike action on January 22nd, one union leader said that they had clearly captured the government's attention. Despite the union's action and widespread public support, the right-wing government of Scott Moe still refuses to negotiate a contract that supports public education. But as with similar struggles across the country, teachers in Saskatchewan are resolved in their fight to defend and expand public education. Meanwhile, unions in New Brunswick gear up for a fight against a new law gutting pensions. Bill 17, the Pension Plan Sustainability and Transfer Act, converts pensions for retirees into shared risk plans that are based on market performance and therefore not guaranteed. The law, which was introduced by the Conservative government and passed in mid-December, overrides several collective agreements in the public sector and attacks free collective bargaining rights enshrined in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The law threatens retirement incomes and collective bargaining rights for workers and unions across the province and throughout Canada. There is a strong basis for countrywide labor solidarity which will be needed if public sector workers in New Brunswick are to defeat this latest attack. That's all for now. For full stories and additional publications, check out pvonline.ca.